Hello and welcome to Midday Report here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. It was another sleepless night in Ukraine as Russian drones and missiles struck once again. Kyiv residents took shelter underground while leaders scrambled to coordinate the next steps in the fight.
Another night, another wave of air raid sirens across Ukraine. Residents in Kyiv rushed to metro stations to seek shelter and try to get some rest amid the war. For them, it's nothing new. But no one ever truly gets used to war.
If I hear something flying close by, I'd rather go down to a shelter than sit between two walls. But if it's not possible, then yes, it's important to at least follow the basic safety rules during martial law.
Ukraine's Air Force said it shot down more than 400 of 500 drones and 21 of 24 missiles launched by Russia overnight, adding that 3 missiles and a few dozen drones managed to reach their targets.
Russia continues to launch strikes. Of course, we will respond to this, respond asymmetrically, so that Russia clearly feels the consequences of its brazenness, and we continue to work with partners to increase pressure on Russia.
In the morning, as firefighters were battling fires and destruction caused by the overnight attacks, British Defense Secretary arrived in Kyiv. His Ukrainian counterpart, Denis Shmyhal, said both officials will coordinate the key issues for the next Ramstein meeting and joint defense projects. Meanwhile, abroad, President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Denmark to coordinate the details ahead of the meeting in Paris, where EU and US allies are set to discuss next steps in the coalition of the willing. The meeting is expected to shed some light on the security guarantees for Ukraine.
So I expect tomorrow or soon after tomorrow to have clarity on what collectively we can deliver. That means that we can engage even more intensely also with the American side to see what they want to deliver in terms of their participation in security guarantees.
Speaking to TVP World, Ryhor Nizhnikau from the Finnish Institute of International Affairs painted a rather pessimistic picture, saying that the West should step up its efforts in countering Russia and aiding Ukraine.
Instead of thinking another half a year about this useless peacekeeping operation, which will not happen in the near future or in the next 5 years, start thinking what is actually feasible in the next half a year.
While the next few days may shed some light on the future of the conflict, for Ukrainians on the ground, life amidst war continues with no end in sight.
The European Commission has approved the trade deal between the EU and the South American Mercosur bloc of nations. The deal, which aims to create the biggest free trade area in the world, will now have to be accepted by the member states' governments, with Poland and France voicing the biggest concerns.
25 years in the making, the deal was finally struck in December and aims to lift tariffs on more than 90% of the products traded between the two blocs. One example is European cars, which currently face a duty of 35%. The agreement will eventually bring it down to zero, but only after 18 years in the case of electric vehicles and 29 years in the case of gas-powered cars. Another provision secures Europe's access to critical commodities, such as Brazilian nickel and Argentinian lithium. However, there remains one point of contention: agriculture. The deal would not remove tariffs on these products completely, but introduce quotas with lower tax for beef and with zero tax on poultry and other products. In exchange, Mercosur will offer higher quotas for products such as cheese. But even those numbers stir fear that the European market will be flooded with cheap South American produce and drive local farmers out of business. Politicians took note, with France and Poland opposing the deal. The Commission says that the new quota pales in comparison to current imports and even offered a protective mechanism. But it's hard to say whether this will be enough to placate its opponents. Now that the Commission has accepted the deal, it will be presented to the European Council. It can be voted down if a coalition of 4 countries emerges. Poland and France would have to be joined by 2 other countries for this to succeed. Italy, once seen as a potential ally, will probably back the deal.
Analysts warn that Poland's domestic political dispute between President Karol Nawrocki and the government over the control of the country's foreign policy is being exploited by unfriendly foreign powers. It surfaces as Nawrocki prepares to meet U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House later on Wednesday.
Karol Nawrocki touches down in America for his first foreign trip as Poland's president. But the visit comes amid conflict between Nawrocki, who was backed by the opposition, and Poland's government over who plays the most important role in developing the country's foreign policy. Beijing had extended an invitation